Hey, I am the Greg, one of the hosts of the Greg and Dave Show. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thank you for tuning into the following broadcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we talk about movie and TV news and reviews, and maybe, just maybe, we'll learn a little something about ourselves. If not, then maybe I made you laugh a couple of times. I don't know. New episodes air bi-weekly on Tuesdays. Thanks again for checking out the totally spectacular following broadcast here on Public House Media.
Welcome to How to Write Good. I'm your host, Daniel Poppy. Find out more about me at danielpoppy.com. Poppy is spelled P-O-P-P-I-E. How to Write Good is brought to you by Public House Media. You can check them out on Facebook. You can type in Public House, or you can check them out at their website at thephmedia.com. If you would like to, if you want to, you can go on Amazon and you can pre-order my book. It's really up to you. If you want to know more about my book, you can check out my website. I have some information about that. I have some information about other things that are in the works, or I will be putting information about about other things that are in the works on the website, because I want to keep people up to date with what's going on. And I've got a lot of plans. All right, so our word of the week is stymie, and I just like this word. That's why it's the word of the week. So stymie means, well, most of you are probably familiar with what stymie means, but it means prevent or hinder something. So it's actually a golfing term, and it sounds like it's Scottish. I believe the Scots were really into golfing originally, and I think that golfing originated in Scotland, but don't quote me on that because I can't remember if that's true or not. But yeah, it's a golfing term. So what it means in golfing, and I think that it's still used as a golfing term. So stymie, as it's used in the English language, is spelled with an I-E at the end, and I believe that the golfing term is just spelled with a Y. So I don't know why, but it is. It actually is a golfing term that when you hit a ball onto the green and there's another person's ball that is obstructing your shot to the hole. So there you go, and that's why it means preventing or hindering something or someone or the progress of something, which makes a lot of sense. Which means it's not a very old word. I mean, I don't know. I don't know when the first golfing started to happen because I'm not really into golfing. All right, we're going to jump into our accidental essence, and we are going to be talking about nostalgia, but we're not talking about nostalgia. And I guess it's a little hard for me to explain, so I'm just going to have to go through it and go through what I have here, and maybe it'll get across to you. It's something that I've been trying to wrap my head around, and it's still something I'm struggling with. And actually, it's something that may be changing my view of art, because I do leave open the possibility that I can change my view of art. I think I've said that in the past. My view of art right now is that it is something, and it's changed since I even started this podcast. It doesn't change very often, so don't. It's just I've been thinking about it so much. I want to get a clear view of what it is and like really wrestle with what the idea is. I actually think it's a really important thing in the world. If you look at every single culture has some type of art, which is really interesting to me. And really developed cultures that have a lot of time on their hands have a lot of art. So the United States top export is media, and it's mostly movies. If you go over to Europe, they watch Netflix and they watch all these American movies. And the United States, well, we don't import a lot from other countries as compared to what we export, but it's every single country is making something. It might not be movies, but it's going to be some type of thing, whether it's music or whether it's visual art or sculpture or whatever. So I've been really wrestling with that, and my current definition, I haven't changed it yet, but I'm going to be talking about a possibility of what it might be. My current definition of art is is something, if you heard that, I just dropped my microphone, is something that is synthesized through the human and is created. And it allows us to better see what is in the world. Something along those lines. And I've said that before, and you know that. But what we're going through with nostalgia, and it's not nostalgia, but I don't know what else to call it to encapsulate what it is. And you may think at the end of this podcast episode, you may think it's nostalgia, dude. But what we're going through today is, it just brings me back to that. Now, I'm going to talk about that at the end, but I just want you to remember that as we're going through it. So we are going to be talking about why you look fondly at the past a little bit, otherwise known as nostalgia. But like I said before, we're going to be talking about something that is related to art that could be nostalgia, but may not necessarily be. I don't really think it is. So nostalgia is, if you look at, it's a bad source. I don't really think it's a good source. I don't think it gives a lot of good information. But if you look at nostalgia, pull up an internet search. I just quick did this. You can look and see on Psychology Today that they do a little bit of explanation about nostalgia, and to a certain degree it's probably good, but if you really want to look into it, I think you really have to dig into actual scientific articles. These articles on like the pop articles like Psychology Today, or you go to something like that, is never going to really give you an in-depth view, and it's not going to be really nuanced. And when you're dealing with something with a human mind, when you're dealing with something with a human, it has to be a lot more nuanced. So when you get to be older, you have nostalgia for the time when you were younger, your teenage years and your 20s. And the reason why that is, and this is actually a psychological phenomenon, the reason why that is because you remember that part of your life better than other parts of your life. I actually think it's because there's tons and tons of change in there, and you're growing as a person, and then once you hit a certain point, there's a lot of static. You're working and you're doing kind of the same thing, and you're probably really, really busy as well. And I think that being really, really busy just makes everything blend together. But that's beside the point. So you actually remember a lot of happy memories from you in your teens and then up to your 30s. And so what you do, so your teens, okay, people with the highest risk for suicide are, I believe, 19-year-olds. Or it might be 21-year-olds. So it's in that window. It's about those 3 years, something like that. A very high risk for suicide. And the reason why they have a really high risk for suicide is because they're likely, there's a lot of changes, and changes create stress. But on top of that as well, they don't have the ability to handle things as well. And when there's someone who is suicidal, they get locked into this way of thinking, and they think the only way out of what they're dealing with is suicide. So your 20s, your teens and your 20s are probably not the happiest time of your life. And if you're like me, you're probably like, oh, what am I doing with my life at this time? Or what should I do with my life? But your teens and 20s are generally not the happiest. And I think they're probably not as happy for people my age. So I'm in my 20s, so I'm kind of speaking from that position. But I think maybe this generation, they're even less happy than previous generations, because previous generations used to get married, and I think you feel more fulfilled when you have kids and there's more to your life than just you and you're working. But what older people do is they think about these memories and they focus on the positive things because, oh, you're so carefree, and you are. Compared to what you have a lot of more responsibilities as you get older, and I'm not that old, and I'm already seeing that. You're more. You look at all these. Oh yeah, I had so much time, and we hung out with our friends, and we had so much time to just get to know people, and we were just free to do things in the summer. And what you do is, if you've ever heard of the idea of working memory, which I'm assuming most people have, is you bring up those memories, you look at those memories, and you actually change those memories, and you put them back in your memory. So you keep on changing the memories, and if you're focusing on the positive. As I stutter a little, if you're focusing on the positive, what happens is you're going to kind of have a glow associated with those memories of those years. And then you're, along with that, you kind of have figured out, I don't know what I'm trying to say. at that time in your life, you've kind of tried to figure things out, and there were so many possibilities open to you that I think there's also a glow around it, because once you get to a certain age, and I'm even feeling this a little bit, I feel like I'm shifting toward more of a trajectory. And you certainly can change what you're doing with your life when you're older. I don't believe that you can't, but I think that people feel like they get on a track and they're stuck on that track for the rest of their life, which I'm going to be fighting hard against, because I think that I still want to try new things when I'm older and try to break into different areas if that's even possible. And people have done it. I really like the show MASH. And this is kind of like, this is his life though. The actor Alan Alda, he was in his 30s by the time he actually made it as an actor. So he was like, oh, I'm not going to just set in this way. I'm going to actually keep on going. But maybe it's part of it. Maybe he's like, man, I've already been doing this so much, and I'm just going to have to do it because it's been so much time. So beyond nostalgia, if you've ever had, and this is what I want to talk about in relation to art, or I'll start this. If you've ever had a really good dream, this is what I want to talk about today, and it's the closest. Nostalgia is the closest idea I can get to it. But if you've ever had a really good dream, like a really vivid dream, I have these, for whatever reason, I have very vivid dreams. These are almost like I'm awake, and it makes it very hard to wake up, because actually when I was younger, I would have dreams about waking up and going to school, and I believe I got through a whole entire school day and then I woke up. But I at the very least, I'd get on the bus when I was younger. But I have very vivid dreams that feel like reality, and sometimes I have a really good dream. So it's like this very carefree dream, and I'm just in a very good place, and stuff that is happening is awesome. And it's not all the way. It's usually in the morning. I usually wake up and then I fall back asleep. Then I have these types of dreams. So when I wake up, I've got this feeling in the back of my mind. And when you first wake up, of course, everybody knows that the dream is there. Like it's very vivid in your mind. You can remember it. But then after a while, that dream starts to fade, and it kind of feels more like a memory. It's like, well, I kind of remember what happened there, but I don't exactly remember. And it's more of a feeling than an actual than an actual thing that seems to have happened to you. A weird thing about me is that I remember really, really early things. And maybe it's not weird. Maybe I'm just saying it's weird. But I actually remember this very faintly. It's a weird type of thing. I remember when I was a really, really little kid, I would take baths in the kitchen sink, because if you're small enough, you can take baths in the kitchen sink. Awesome. But I remember taking baths in the kitchen sink, and there's just an image. It's almost a feeling, but I have an image of it. I have an image of being there. So if it never happened, if there's someone who can tell me, like from my family, and like that never happened, nobody ever took baths in the sink. It's really bizarre, but I have this memory of it, and nobody ever told me that it happened or not. Like it's not like there's something I can connect in my brain to, in my memory, or in something I watched. There's never been something that I can remember. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. For example, so because now I have to explain what I'm explaining, because I'm having a bad time saying it. For example, I've had situations where I ran into something and I'm like, wait, that wasn't always like that. Why do I remember it differently? And then I started doing research, and then I found a piece of media, and I'm like, okay, that's why I remember it that way. But with this, I don't remember it. I can't find a piece of media. There's no specific piece of media that I remember. It's just this faint, it's almost like an echo, like a very distant echo. And there's also, I'll get to that in a little bit. So it's more of like an emotional experience. It's this very faint like picture in my mind of something happening. And what else is really weird to me is I don't remember, like nobody remembers a very big portion of their childhood. I guess I don't really understand why I remember being so little and being able to take a bath in the sink. It's kind of a weird thing, I suppose. But there's this aspect. So when I run into a specific piece of media, and it's usually music, when I run into a specific piece of art, let's call it that, because I think it really is art typically when I run into it, I have this experience of, it's not nostalgia. I used nostalgia before, but this is what it is. It's not nostalgia. It's almost it's almost like a memory, but I don't have a memory associated with it. If you think of it like folklore, so folklore, I really, really like folklore. I think it's really cool, and there's something about it that is very, not spiritual, but it makes me feel like it actually happened, right? You read these folklore stories, and people used to tell them as if they existed, and it's as if there's an existence in the past that never really existed. There's this existence or this thing that happened in the past that the world was different, okay? And that's what this experience when I run into specific types of art is like. Like, I run into a piece of art, and I feel like, oh, well, way back when I was a little tiny kid, like really, really small, barely remember anything, life was like this. That's what it seems like. Like, there's this, and I guess to a certain degree it is nostalgia, but there's no memories associated with it. I just brought up the memory of me being in the sink because it's a memory, and I guess I attached these things to it because they kind of group together, but I don't have any other memories besides that one. But it's not even that it was a simpler time. It's just that there was a different world I was existing in, and I'm not trying to say that I was existing in another world. It's just trying to get across a feeling, and this actually, maybe if I bring up actual music that does it to me. So I recently started listening to Nirvana. Nobody in my family ever listened to Nirvana, but there's this weird thing that there were different rules to the world when I listened to Nirvana. Now, I'm not saying there were. I think that the world has already always been complicated. I think the world has always been difficult, and I think there's been a lot of pain in the world. I don't think that, I'm not trying to look through the world through rose-colored glasses, but and I don't even have memories of these things. It's just when I listen to it, it's like there was a different situation at that time. But that time, that situation that I'm talking about never existed, which goes back to the idea of folklore, which goes back to this idea. It's like Nirvana was singing about things that either never existed and people just want them to exist, or there's some aspect of reality that they tapped into that we don't see because we're so busy. And again, I guess you could call this nostalgia, but I don't really think it is. I think it's something else. And the thing about these memories is that they're not always happy. They're not memories. It's just an easy thing to say. The thing about this experience is that it's not always happy. It's not always sad. It's just either or. It's just an experience. And the world, this folklore world that exists in, is it's just something. It's a whole world to itself. It's as if, man, it's so hard to describe. I'm trying to get at something that isn't something I can verbalize fully. So if I ever really get my head around it, then I think that I'll be able to explain it better. So it's like mythology, like folklore. If you've ever had this experience before, you should just be like, hey, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. Actually, who got me thinking? The person who got me thinking about this is Daniel Fear. When he was on the show in February, I think he was on the show in February. Gosh, it seems like 2 years ago. When he was on the show this past February of 2018, he was talking about something similar to this at the very end, where you're trying to get somebody to experience something. And I think that's kind of where he was hitting. Okay, that's where he was trying to get to, and that's kind of where I'm trying to get to right now. So the experience is something spiritual, like as if there was, and I'm not trying to be all mystical about this. It's just the best way to describe it, as if there was this core person you are and this core reality. And so if we go back to logic, there's this idea that we're trying to define something, and the definition is the core of that thing. So if I say, this describes all different types of dogs, then I could apply that to every single dog and it would work. And it's as if your actual person, so there's certain things that are you, and there's certain things that are extra, right? There's certain things that you don't need that aren't necessarily part of you. So if you took me out of this situation, if you took me out of the world I live in right now, and you stuck me somewhere without any technology, I'd still be me, right? I still have my personality, and I'd still do things the way I do things. It would just be outside of technology. If you took me and you took away everything I could write with, and you wouldn't allow me to write, that might be a different story. That actually might be a very close aspect of me, something that shapes me a lot because I do it so much. But with the world also, I think there's certain things. Let me describe the world a bit more. I think the world isn't even necessarily, like, it's not the physical earth. It's like your life. Okay, so the world, your life, it's more than just your life, though. It's everything around your life. It's the whole society. That's what I'm talking about with the world, okay? So the world also, there's, with life, with society, with culture, with everything, there's a core to it. And there's a lot of other things we can just toss off. And I'm not talking about creating a utopia or anything like that. I'm just talking about how I think there are specific things that are really, really important to life and things that make life. Does that make sense? So there's certain things that, like, I can run after, I can chase after certain things that are very that don't matter as much. So I wouldn't mind being very rich. I don't see why anybody wouldn't want to be very rich. Now, if I'm only trying to get rich, I think that that's something I can get rid of. That's not important. But I think that if I was trying to, if I was doing that and I was disregarding everything else, I wouldn't end up with so many things that are important to life. There's a lot of things that in life that actually make it a lot richer. And I think that some of those things are, like friendships, like connecting to other people is definitely one of those things, and not just a superficial connection, but an actual connection. Along with that, I think that I think getting married, I know that some people out there are probably like, I'm never going to get married, but I think getting married is one of those things that it's not essential for your life being good, but I think it's something that just shows you that there's more to life. There's so much more many more valuable things than this. But I think especially like family and different things like that. So think of it like these core things that make life so important. And that is what I'm trying to get at. It's as if Nirvana, I guess, tapped into these core things in life, and they kind of put it out. And even like there's a lot of songs that Nirvana puts out that are extremely depressing, but I think that's part of it. Okay, I don't think that it's all good. I think that it's accepting that as well. And there's other things that don't really matter. Does it matter if I podcast in my life? No. Does it matter if I make millions of dollars? No. Does it matter if I eat a specific way? Does it matter if I don't smoke? It really doesn't. Smoking will make my life shorter generally. It doesn't always. So, but that'll make my life shorter. Some things will make me healthier, but it doesn't necessarily make my life. There's more to it than that. I think it's good. I think that that the superficial things can help you, but it's not the fact that the superficial things help you. It's that you've already figured out a way to live, and those superficial things come afterward. All right, so you are putting the horse before the cart, proverbially, or there's this thing that people do. They have a jar and they have different sized rocks, and they have sand and they have water, and then they're like, okay, like if you put small things first, the other things aren't going to happen. Like the big important things, if you put the big things first, all the other things are going to happen. So think of that. What I'm trying to describe is that core, but it's more like something that we want as humans. And maybe I'm totally off base. Maybe it's something that doesn't make sense at all. Maybe you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude, but it's just an experience that we want as humans. I'm going to, how much more do I have? So if you do any reading about Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, so they're really big fantasy writers, and C.S. Lewis was a very big Christian fantasy writer, and he does some more philosophical writing in Christianity as well. And most people know that. I mean, seriously, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's pretty transparent that it's I don't know if you call it an allegory, but it's something like that. A picture of the crucifixion and stuff like that. But one really interesting thing, and take it or leave it, well, you can take the Christianity aspect or leave it if you want to. Like, that is your choice. I'm not gonna harp on people, but one really interesting thing that I've always found, and self-disclosure, I am a Christian, so this is just something that sticks with me for understanding my faith, but at the same time, I think it's something that we can apply to other areas. I think that there's something that's been tapped into here. So C.S. Lewis was an atheist for a very long time in his life, and if you ever go and look at the story of his life, he talks about this fact that he would have these conversations because Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were friends, and they would have discussions about different things, and they would have discussions about Christianity, and they went back and forth about it. So Tolkien was Catholic, and C.S. Lewis eventually became Anglican, I believe, and they go back and forth about these different things, and eventually, so when they were talking one time, I can't remember who exactly described it this way. I don't even know if it was Tolkien or somebody else, but I believe it was Tolkien. So Tolkien was talking about this idea how the Christian belief system was C.S. Lewis, I think, had an objection to it. He's like, well, how could this happen? Or, I mean, I'm sure he did. And Tolkien came back with this idea. He's like, the Christian belief system is a mythology. So there's all these mythologies in the world. And if you look at Tolkien, I think that I feel like I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just feel like he was a professor of mythology in some capacity as well as other things he did. But I can't remember it off the top of my head. I will look at that and I'll put it in the show notes. But so he was talking about, he's like, okay, there's all these mythologies in the world, and these mythologies tap into truths about the human world and different things about how humans function in that world. He's like, Christianity is a mythology. The stories of Christianity are a mythology. And he's like, the thing about the Christianity and the fact that it's a mythology that's actually true. Okay, so now you can take it or leave it. You can take that or leave it, but let's apply it to art in general. I think that to a certain degree, really, really good art is like that. So there's these things that come up in us with folklore when somebody really taps into an experience, when you have folk, like I really connect to folk music because it connects to something in me that's almost like folklore, right? Or mythology, something connects to you and you're like, wow, like why do people come up with this? People are searching for truth, not just about like facts in the world. There's a very different quality between somebody just trying to find facts in science, which I think is important. But there's a very different quality between that and being like, what is the purpose of humanity? And I think that Tolkien, he's like, okay, Christianity is a mythology, but it's a true mythology. So this is the mythology. The purpose of that is trying to find the purpose of humanity, why it came about, how it came about, all these different very metaphysical questions in existence, in the human existence. And he was saying that was the case for Christianity. So Christianity answered all these different metaphysical questions. And what I'm saying is I think that art, really good art, also does that. So it isn't like a belief system, but it grabs onto something that is deeper than the surface level stuff in reality. So you have, like, if you look around, there's so much more than just like the superficial things going on around you. There's so much more than what color your table is. There's more to like, why are we here? What are we supposed to do? What is ultimate truth? What is the most important thing in our lives? And a lot of people pick a lot of different things. If you are religious, you kind of have a belief system set around those different things. But I think that art, and with those belief systems, before I go into art, with those belief systems, a lot of people find a lot of peace in those different belief systems. And what I think art does is it taps into that truth, and it connects us in that core person we are. I'm not trying to get mystical. It's just something that's happening. I'm not a mystical person. I'm not someone who talks about this, talks like this generally. And because of that, we have an experience that is beyond even something we've experienced. And going back to me with like Nirvana or specific, I talked about Hopper's Nighthawks. There's a painting by Hopper called Nighthawks. That's also something that taps into what I am talking about, or this experience. But it connects to you in a way that it gets past all these different barriers. It's not just this superficial garbage that you sometimes run into in music. I think that, well, if, Kurt Cobain had a bipolar disorder, so he was somebody who was struggling with a lot of different things. And I think that to a certain degree he was just making up nonsense when he was singing, and to some other degrees he was just trying to convey his experiences. I had a post on my blog about the value of your, I'm talking really fast because I don't have much time. I had a post on my blog about the value of your art. And in that post, I was talking about how if you really just try to convey your experiences and you do it in earnest, you do it really truthfully, you're not trying to be pompous, you're not trying to just make everybody love you, but you're just saying, hey, here's what I experienced. I think that's what does it. And I think that, I don't know, I'm much more satisfied with art and music and books. And maybe I don't even know if I reach this level myself. I don't think I do. I think I fail on this a lot. But I'm really satisfied. It's really satisfying to read something you're like, wow, that really met me somewhere where I didn't even know existed. That really met me at the core of my person. And I hope this episode makes sense to people. I know that you may think, like, I don't know exactly what he's talking about. Slow down a bit, maybe read, maybe listen to more music. Try to find music that's just human, you know? That's the best way I can describe it. So yeah, so that's what I've got for the accidental lessons today. We're going to jump into logical fallacy. So the logical fallacy of this week is the McNamara fallacy. I can barely read that. So what it is making a decision based on qualitative observation, and you're disregarding all other things. So think of it this way. So if the majority of the people are fed or rich, and healthy, it doesn't matter. Like, that's really, really good. But that's not actually good. So we could say, oh, the majority of the people in the United States are healthy, right? We are really, really healthy. But what we do to get healthy is we kill people, right? So that would be part of the McNamara fallacy. So we're seeing the total number of people are healthy, and we're saying, oh, that's great. But at the same time, every time we have this smaller minority population that is persecuted, essentially, and they're maybe killed for the health of everybody else. Like, maybe we have 1,000 people, and we experiment on those people relentlessly, and then we keep on replacing them with more people. That's a very small minority of the population, but we're getting so many different things from that minority. That is the McNamara fallacy. This also applies to things like slavery. If somebody was trying to justify slavery and saying it was actually better for society because there was so much work getting done, but there in the United States there's a minority of black people who are slaves, and you could say, oh well, the South is really doing well because of these slaves, and they're not that many people were hurting, so it's all right. That goes with that. Also, one thing I run into, and you can't really quantify this, but somebody might try to put a number on it, is there's this argument that if the total happiness of the world goes up, then it's better. So if the total happiness increases, it doesn't matter what happens as long as that helps the total happiness to increase in the world. First of all, you can't measure happiness. Second of all, what if like somebody is happy is 3,000 times as happy as someone else or the general population? So I can pretty much oppress 2,000 people, and the total happiness is still higher because of that. I mean, okay, maybe I'm getting a little off base with that, but it's like that. So there may be some other factor. Maybe the total happiness goes up, but we have to kill every single dog in the world, which wouldn't make the total happiness go up. I'm aware of that, but something like that. Kill every cat in the world. All right. This is How to Write Good. Well, let's do that again. My name is Daniel Poppy, and this is How to Write Good. As always, see you later.